Hi again, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Alumni Chats, a weekly podcast featuring alumni from the Department of Broadcasting and Journalism here at Western Illinois University. My name is Buzz Hoon. I'm the host of the podcast today. I have the pleasure of speaking with Jason Tanamor, a graduate of 2002. And Jason, I think we have not talked, really. We may have emailed, but I don't think we've talked in 20 years. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So tell everybody where you are, what's going on in your life. Let's get a life update.
Well, right now I am in Rock Island, Illinois. I currently live in Portland, Oregon with my wife and 5 animals. I have a grown child and his wife are here back home in the Quad Cities here. So I'll be here till about mid-July, and then we'll be heading back to Portland probably for the next year or so. And just been commuting back and forth and trying to keep busy.
And we're going to get into your writing in just a few moments here, but you are also an author of nonfiction work, and in fact, you have a book out called "The Vampires of Portlandia."
Correct.
And you're going to have a new book coming out? Is that right?
Yes, I want to correct you. It's not nonfiction; they're both fiction.
Okay, fiction. I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah. No, that's right. Yes. So Vampires of Portlandia came out September 2020.
Okay.
And it was my, I don't know, maybe 9th or 10th book. But it was really the first one where I started writing about my own Filipino heritage. And it was a long kind of convoluted story. And I'm sure you being in media probably can relate and understand. There's just this void of people of color news. And so just and that was the thing, I never really saw myself in books growing up. And it wasn't until recently when all these, I started really kind of, I guess, woke, if that's the culture, I don't know if I use that properly. But I started dedicating, I just want to write stories that have people that look like me in it and kind of share the heritage that I neglected to really embrace as a second Filipino growing up in America. And so that was really the first that I did, and it's based off Filipino folklore, aswang. And I thought it was very underrepresented, and so it's kind of done okay. It could do better, but it could do worse. But I'm very proud of what I put out there. And then the next book coming out next year is a young adult book loosely based off my time dancing Filipino folk dances.
Nice.
As a kid. And it was one of those things where as a Filipino kid growing up in white America, primarily white private school, I was just embarrassed about it. But I love doing it. And it's just kind of follows a little kind of me, young, and he's trying to balance that life with his public life in school, and then he meets a girl, and now all of a sudden things start to clash, and then there's a climax at the end, but that's all I can really go from there. We're in the middle of edits right now, so it could possibly change.
This is quickly evolving to one of my class sessions in mass media and minorities as well.
Yes.
Yeah,
I remember that class. That's still a big influence on me. I appreciate that class.
Yeah, thank you. Let's start back at your beginning. You're from the Quad City area. Mm-hmm. And there are two things that I think are obvious to people that may know you. And I know you a little bit. I don't know you as well as maybe others, but I think you have a very good sense of humor and you are a very good writer. So how do you think that those talents kind of developed in you?
It's funny because my dad, people will tell you he's the funniest guy you ever meet. But I grew up with very traditional parents. You got to go to school for something practical. So I never really knew that you could do something creative. It was just floored me. And so my first degree, bachelor's degree, was in accounting. And I actually practiced as an accountant before I decided to go back to school, which I ended up at Western. And initially I wanted to get my master's, but I was still at that thing. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And so, but I knew I liked making people laugh. I remember seeing the reaction that people get talking to my dad, and just that the way you can just kind of charm and influence people by entertaining and essentially not being a douchebag. And writing was something I just always enjoyed. So I remember going to talk to Mike Murray when I first stepped on campus. And we just was talking, and he kind of swayed me into going to broadcasting. I had this weird idea thinking, because I really grew up watching sitcoms and the old Tonight Show type shows. And I really had this idea that I wanted to write for like humor on television. Back then there was no Comedy Central. There's not 1,000 shows. There's only like a handful of shows that you could really do. And I thought that was just this neatest, because I never really wanted to be in the spotlight. I did do stand-up, but that was really motivated because I wanted to try out material. But I really don't like going up and talking in front of you. That's just something I don't care to do. I can do it in a setting where we're sitting around, but just going up and people relying on me to entertain you is just not something that I want. So I ended up at Western, and my first real instance to kind of build my voice and develop what I wanted to do was writing for the Western Courier. I wrote this humor column. I don't know if you remember it, but it was ridiculous. It was just ridiculous, and it was something that no one was doing. It was always just sports pieces or commentary or counterpoint type stuff. But in the Quad City Times years ago, I don't know if they still do it, but they used to syndicate Dave Barry columns.
Yep.
And I was just like, what does this guy do? He just writes about nonsense. But it was just something that I was always wanting to read, and that's kind of who I emulated growing up.
Well, when I talk with students who like to write something or produce something that they think is going to be funny, I tell them, the concept of writing something that's funny seems like it's easy work. It's very difficult to write something that is going to be considered to be funny.
Right. There's if you get a chance, there's a Google Jerry Seinfeld "Don't Give Awards to Comedians" that speech. It sums up exactly what you're saying. And he basically says how the only people that really should get awards are comedians because they have to write funny stuff. And, but it's really interesting. So I agree. It's something that sounds easy. And when you say something, it could hit or miss, but you don't really know until you do it.
And then while you're at the Courier and you have this humor column, I'm sure you're getting shaped by the responses of people and the reactions of people as well on what you're writing. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you had your little avatar picture in the paper. So every now and again, some people would see you. I remember getting emails about, hey, there's this party going on. You could probably get material here on Pierce Street or something. And it's just random stuff like that. But the biggest thing that jumped out at me was a letter to the editor, to the Courier. And I remember I can't remember who the editor at the time was, had forwarded to me. And I was floored because it was something that I would never even dawned. It almost took more time for him to think about writing this than it took me to write this stupid humor column that he was offended by. And he basically said that, what I wrote was ridiculousness, true story. It was unresearched, guilty, and it embarrassed, the city of Macomb. Maybe, I don't know. It depends on how you looked at it. But it was one of those things, and I hadn't taken minorities in the media class yet. So it was one of those things where, you kind of grow up thinking that the newspaper is objective and it's very safe, I guess. And here's this guy who got offended over something that had zero intent to offend. And it was really something that when I left there thinking our voices really do matter. The whole sticks and stones break my bones thing. Words do matter, and they are important, and they can steer society and culture. And we saw it the last 4, 8, 10 years, just what's been going on in the media.
So what other memories or do you have about WIU? Looking back now, it's been about 20 years. Classes, faculty members, other students, anything that jumps out where you have some good memories?
I really enjoyed the relationships I built. When I went there, I was a little bit older. I think I was kind of 3 or 4 years older than the normal student coming through with the broadcasting. So I think I realized that I really enjoyed my relationships while we're in class and up until maybe 6 o'clock at night. But then it was time for them to go out. I'm like, okay, that's kind of late for me. But, I enjoyed all the classes. I loved doing the hands-on thing. And I never really went into broadcasting afterwards. So that was kind of my, I don't want to say regret. Yeah, I thought about it after I graduated, but I always just kept selling writing, and Western Courier was really the reason why I continued that, because I actually transitioned that humor column onto the internet back in 2002. And back then, Google and Facebook and all these social media sites weren't around. So there were really only a handful of online publications that were available, and they were all listed in alphabetical order on Yahoo directory. And so I started this humor magazine called Zoiks Online. And the reason I picked Zoiks was because it was a Z. And I thought, if anyone's going to find me and they look in this directory, they're either going to see the couple on A and a couple Z, they're not going to find me in the middle. And I really just transitioned my column to that. And I recruited some Western people like Brienne Nelson, who's now Brienne Schultz. So we all just, basically me and my friends just wrote this ridiculous site. And then I started doing stand-up and met some people, and then gradually met a couple people at the Moline Dispatch and was offered the comedy and music beat. And I started interviewing comedians and musicians. And so I started taking those to the online magazine, and then it just morphed into stand-up and music. And then from there I started writing for Yahoo, and it just like imploded, or it exploded into this kind of this own beast. But my true love was just writing fiction. I just really wanted to do that. And so I somehow transitioned out of that to start writing fiction.
It's such a, yeah. And I try to tell students sometimes about when they're trying to plan out the rest of their life when they're 20 years old and saying, this is what I want to do. And I say, sometimes you will have a job that no one will know exists right now, right. And I think in your, back in the early part of that time, no one knows how the internet is going to become so dominant in terms of the media platform that everybody goes to now. Yeah. So for you to get involved into that area so early on was really, fortunate for you, I think, at that period of time. And you had some, as you said, you went out as an entertainment reporter, and you had some really outstanding interviews. Can you tell us, share a little bit, because I think everybody always wants to hear about, celebrities. So I was a feature writer for Yahoo TV and music and movies. So I had the opportunity to, and I covered a lot of stand-up. And so I kind of had a gentleman's agreement with some people at Comedy Central where I'd just cover some of their comics and interview some of them. So I got to talk to Dane Cook and Dimitri Martin and Gabriel Iglesias and Aisha Tyler. And then on the music spectrum, I just got to that point where record labels and public, and the funny thing is like, as big as you think the entertainment industry is, it's really not. It seems like there's the same 10 publicists that work at different agencies or whatever. And they would just give me these free CDs at the time and free concert passes and hook me up with interviews. And so I was able to interview like Red Hot Chili Peppers and Billy Corgan from Smashing Pumpkins, and even Pete Rose. Pete Rose, the greatest hitter of all time, arguably, had a reality show. I don't know if you remember that. It was on for like one season or something. So bad. Yeah, it was ridiculous. But did a feature on him for Yahoo TV. Super nice guy, still, taking a stance on the Hall of Fame. Yeah, what's going on. But it's just one of those things that I never thought or dreamed about. Interviewing people, and thankfully for me that everyone, you always get that, you always fear that you look up to someone and then you meet that person, they're like, God, that guy's a douche. I didn't get that. I really didn't get that. Dane Cook, I remember asking him, I flat out asked him, I'm like, why are you on this list with the Yankees? And everyone just seems to hate you, and the Patriots for no reason, it seems like. And I have a friend who will always just joke about Dane Cook, but I don't think he's ever really watched him or anything. Right. And I remember asking him about it, and I can't remember what the answer was, but the thing is like when you interview all these celebrities, you're kind of slotted in a 15-minute thing. So it might be like 9:15, but then the person before you might go over or go under. Next thing you know, they're calling you late. Jim Brewer called me an hour later. One person called me a day late. Dane Cook was running late, and he texted me and apologized. And it was just really odd for someone of his stature to take the time out, because I don't know how many interviews he had that day.
A lot of time they have a person, a publicist or some assistant will connect with you and say, oh, we're still waiting or whatever. But that was the thing that really jumped out at me. Like, he was super, super nice, and he has this reputation for whatever reason.
As you said, you have this, and I'm going to call it chapters of your career. Since we're in this writing mode here, you have this period of time where you're starting off your career, getting involved in writing, but then you also have a stand-up life, and then you go into fiction writing. And how was that transition? Because was that just a creative part of you that said it needs to come out?
I think so. I found that, and my wife will say the same thing. It's like, I'm very interested in a lot of things. And I played guitar for a long time as a kid. Most of my late high school and early college, the first time around, I played pool for money, billiards. It was just things that I really got into. And looking back, I feel like I went, but didn't go as far as I probably could have, to a point where you want to take it further. But I remember going when I was doing the entertainment reporting and running the blog, and then starting to write fiction. I remember my wife saying, you really need to pick one thing and decide and focus on it. If you're ever going to really get anywhere, you're going to have to do that. And I don't know why fiction really just spoke to me. It was just one of those things. One of the most solace times in my life is just sitting with a paperback, with a physical book, not an audio book, not a Kindle or anything. It's that feel of the book. And I really just feel the most comfortable. And it was just always something that I wanted to do. So the transition kind of ran its own course, other than me deciding. I mean, my wife was kind of the instigator when I went from entertainment to fiction, but it probably would have come out eventually, because we have a family. We both work full time. We're driving across the country a couple times per year. We got pets, children like that. So when you don't have that much time, a lot of that dictates your own narrative, so to speak. So fiction is kind of where I'm at. I haven't done really anything. I entertained the idea of when I moved to Portland to start interviewing again. So I very lazily reached out to some of the local publications there, and thankfully, they had their own staff, because I felt like I easily could have been trapped, because nothing against the Quad Cities, but Portland is just a bigger market for stuff like that. I mean, Every day some big act is coming, sometimes 2 or 3 at a time. Or the Quad Cities they'll beat to death Paul McCartney coming for 2 years, because that's just the market. A lot of people. So it was just easier. So I really thank the Portland publications for not offering me anything, because I really think once I moved there, my fiction writing jumped up several levels.
So you have this voice coming out in written form, to tell these stories, but have you realized sort of the impact that it can have on people that where you've talked about you're trying to bring some of your culture out, and somebody else's culture they recognize a situation that's happening that may be similar. Have people expressed that to you about how important it is to have that sort of story being told?
Oh yeah, absolutely. A lot of some of the reviewers by Filipino bloggers or reviewers are, I can't believe a story like this exists. I never thought I'd see international book like this, because it's so underrepresented. And my goal writing was to kind of open up interpretation for other people to write about it. It's all about turning readers into writers and non-creative folks into something that they think they could do and try. Because, I've never been one to say, well, I can't do it. I'm just going to do it. Whether it's great or not, I'm going to do it. And I think that's what, when you talked about some of the students now that they kind of know what they want to do early on, that's very rare. A lot of times you don't know what you want to do and you fall into something. And some of these kids who know exactly what they want to do, they need to be doing everything to get to that point to be able to do that. Because a lot of my friends are just complaining about the jobs they have. Well, why don't you do something about it? Well, it's always something. Or, I want to go back to school, but I'm like, why don't you go back to school? Well, I got kids. Like, and it's all very jarring when I say like, are you going to drown your kids tomorrow? And like, what? No, you're always going to have kids. There's always going to be an excuse for something. So you got to want to do it. You got to want to know what you do early. And for me, writing that book was, I talked to a lot of people, and I always say, you should write that. You should put that in a book. You should write that. You should do stand up. And it's always, I can't do it, and like I've known some of the most hilarious people who can tell stories that don't do anything with it. And it just boggles my mind, because I don't know if it's afraid of fear, if there's afraid of failing or what, but, or sometimes people are afraid of succeeding. And it's just really bizarre, because to me, it's regretting things you don't do versus things you do. And I've never wanted to be that way.
Yeah. One of the things I try to talk with incoming students a lot about is try to say yes to almost everything. At first, try to say yes to all the opportunities and the experiences that you're going to have in this new part of your life. At some point in time, you're going to have to pull back and say, no, I need to be focused on a little bit, sleep. I need to eat. I need to study, whatever it may be. Those are important to me. Make sure that they remind them about studying. But at some point in time, that you're right. They need to try to have a belief in themselves. So I guess as we're kind of wrapping up our talk here, if there's a student listening and saying, I've always wanted to do what he's doing, whether it's to try to write in a humorous way, or to do stand up, or to write a fiction story, try to tell something of their own, storyline, their own creativity, how would you encourage them? What would you tell them to do?
So one of my favorite albums is the Globe Sessions by Sheryl Crow. And there's a song called Maybe It's Something. And one of the lyrics is one that is probably one of my favorite quotes, and I think about it a lot. And it goes, making miracles is hard work. Most people give up before they happen. And I really think that everyone has a chance to be great, but you really got to I think the biggest excuse that they tell themselves is, I can't do it, for whatever reason, whether like fear, again, failing. You'll find so much more reward after that initial fear is gone. That's always the next step after fear's reward. It's whatever it is. It's going up there and doing it. It's whatever it is. So if you know what you want to do, you don't get many opportunities, especially in publishing. There's a New York Times article that came out that said since 1950, 5% of published books were by people of color. That's astonishing.
Wow.
When you think about that. And I'm a part of that 5%. And it wouldn't have been if I can't do it, or I just didn't try. And that's the thing. It's like try and fail, because failure is not the opposite of success. It's a part of it.
Wow. Well said. And I hope that someone out there is listening and is inspired, because, I'm just so proud, when you first told me, and I think I saw something online about your book, and I thought, here's somebody that is taking advantage of life, which is, I know your wife is saying you need to be focused, but I think you're so creative and you've got so many talents. It's really fun to see that you're out there doing so many really kind of cool things.
I appreciate it. Again, I want to thank you for that. You still teaching the minorities in media class?
Well, I haven't taught as much since I'm in the dean's office, and other people other people are teaching the class. It's still out there.
Okay, good.
It's my, I think of it as my class, though. Yes.
Yeah, it was really a eye opener to me, and how media can shape viewers and minds. So I appreciate that, and I think it really steered me in the right direction.
Well, Jason, thanks for sharing this time. Thanks for sharing your stories and your experiences. I definitely appreciate it, and I know that our listeners and our viewers do as well.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And thanks to our weekly viewers out there. If you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, or if you want to recommend someone, please send me an email. We want to hear from our alums. We hope that you continue to watch and listen to the podcast, and really appreciate everyone's support. Until next week, stay safe, take care, and God bless.